Welcome along to the Cardiff City phone-in on our new home. Great to be here. As I say, and all the best, entertainment shows. We moved across to a new platform. I'll explain that to you in a bit more detail in a second. We might have Nigel Blues joining us later on, but in the meantime, we have Steve Thomas. Hi, Steve. Well, thanks for coming again.
Evening, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Looking very resplendent in your fine shirt there. Still the best kit we've ever had by miles.
Thank you very much.
Matthew Harris. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Steve. I don't think we're live though, Steve. Looking at my YouTube.
I think you might be very soon. I think it catches up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So just while we're talking, because obviously people can see this subsequently, I'll just explain the move to YouTube. So we will still have a presence on Facebook. We'll still share links and information and plug stuff on Facebook, but we got pulled down for something to do with community standards. I have absolutely no idea what anyone's talking about, because talking of community, it goes out in 3 different community radio stations. There is, and there's no bad language, and it's all done pretty well for a family audience. So we tried to relaunch it off the new site, because I had to then move to a new site. Once this stuff has happened, you can't communicate with the Facebook police, really. They don't really get back to you if they even exist in the human form. And so we tried to launch last week. I didn't go so well. So then we thought, right, let's if you excuse the Cardiff City pun, bite the bullet, and go across to YouTube. And so that's hence where we are now. And thanks if you have subscribed, and please, if you have subscribed, share and like and all the rest of it. As far as I can tell now, we should be up and running on the YouTube channel, Matthew. But we'll carry on anyway for now. Steve, so what are your? Obviously the other thing was we started a little bit later this season with the show. And we had to wait until we were in the playoffs, That I can honestly say that's what it was, And now we're in at 6. We can start the series, which is beautiful. Four wins in a row for, I think, the first time since Mad Mick. Somebody told me. What's your thoughts on the season so far, Steve? You must be a happy man.
I'm generally a cup half full kind of person, as you know, Steve, and I have to say I'm very, very happy with it. We've won, is it 4 home games this season already? Is it 4 home games we've won? We won 6 in the whole of last season at home, so that does bode very well, I think. And the way we're playing, the way the new players have come in doing really well, particularly Siopis and Gutas has come on tremendously in recent weeks as well, I think. But also the way he's brought players on who seemed much more ordinary last season, particularly Tete and Ollie Tanner's been an absolute revelation. I prefer him coming on as an impact player later on. It was a shame with the injury to Matey on Saturday that he had to come on so early, coming out with 15 minutes gone rather than 15 minutes to go. But again, he's looked really, really good. I really enjoyed. I know we've had some thoroughly enjoyable home wins, not least against the people down west. But I did particularly enjoy our win at Sunderland, because we absolutely did a fantastic away performance there. We stopped them playing. We had them constantly playing across our 2 banks of 4. We did the smash and grab. We got a goal at the end. Then, of course, we should have perhaps scored another one after that. I'm not wishing to criticise Mr. Tanner at all after his fantastic performance against Swansea, but goodness me, how did he miss that one at the end at Sunderland? Yeah.
Ollie Tanner is, I think he's been probably the most surprised. Has he, in a pleasing way, would you say, Steve, of the
yes, I do.
The newish players, because he was out on loan. Some are really obscure.
Yeah, he was at York City last season. Couldn't get in their side, I understand. But yes, I used to live in East Sussex for many years, and people there that spoke very highly of him when he was at Lewes. Obviously, he didn't do very well when he first came in, and I think everybody was questioning him signing. A lot of doubters have been proved wrong about him. But I think the way he came on and basically tipped the balance in our favour against Swansea was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, going back to your question about the players, Steve, very impressed with the players that have come in, particularly Siopis. I mean, when it was announced that Errol Bullitt was our manager back at the start of June, like most people, I thought, who is Errol Bullitt? Read up about him. He's a bit of a chance, but then we've not really taken a chance before. We've brought in old established managers or the less expensive option, shall we say politely. This is a chance we've taken here. And so far, I'm very much, to use the cliche, I'm very much on the bullet train with him at the moment. Obviously,
can we have more bullet jokes? Come on.
Sorry, apologies. But yeah, I think the way he's changed the way we play. The only disappointment really would be Ipswich, I think, where we were 2-2 up, and then we ended up losing 3-2.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, looking back on it, first Ipswich goal, we were 2-0 up. You can't really legislate from that pile drive into the top corner, but there was an element of good fortune about both Ipswich's second and third goals. So again, we genuinely, Matthew said before we went on air that we've not done very well against teams at the bottom. Last season we weren't doing very well against teams at the top either. So having played away games against the top two already, as well as Leeds, of course, and Sunderland are up above us as well. In theory, we've played some of our tougher games as well. Yet we're already in the top six. Yet my cup is very much half full on this, and I'm enjoying the ride.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know whether this is actually, I don't think this is for some reason going out live at the moment on YouTube, but we're going to carry on and record it, and we can just share it subsequently and then try and build from there, because it's not far off. It's quite a technical thing actually to set it up and move it across. There may be other options, but of course we wouldn't have done any of that if we could have just continued on Facebook. It's a real shame. Matthew, so our half time on the weekend against Rotherham, it wasn't a great first half, but even so, it still felt to me, there was way more positivity than there had been at pretty well most home games I could remember last season. And the crowd seemed to be generally, do you think, quite patient and understanding and enjoying the ride, really?
Yeah, I think there's, being Cardiff fans, there's a certain level of expectation now we've started winning games and playing good football. So I think
yes, there is.
Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But I think, people thought Rotherham would turn up and we beat them 3-4, 5-0. They've been conceding on average, I think, 3-4 goals a game and not scoring many. So they were always going to come here and, put 8 at the back and, make it hard for us to play against them, and a few ex-City players in there as well. So it's always going to be a tough game to break them down. And, we looked a lot more. I mean, I know Steve said before we came on air that the difference between playing Rotherham away the end of last season to Rotherham at home this season is it's like a completely different club. We looked in control. We didn't really look threatened. They had maybe 1 or 2 good chances, but you felt like once Ntete got that goal, I don't think you saw the result going anyway other than towards us. And we could have won 3-4-0 if we were a bit more clinical. So yeah, I think the fans are quite happy, and it's a very big difference to last year. And we were in the top 6 and won 3 games without our best player. So I think we can be quite positive.
Yeah, I mean, we are clearly, like any team in this division would, obviously missing Paul Ramsey. Aaron Ramsey. There's a Freudian slip. That's an old man City comment. Aaron Ramsey, who is a class above pretty well any other midfielder probably in this division, pretty well, still is been surprisingly good. But even so, it's the way we set up. Matthew and Steve talked about this before we went live. Obviously, just to say, by the way, once we get this up and running, it's a bit of a trial tonight. Once we get up and running, we will have live chat. We will be able to, engage with viewers as we go on. But we're really close to having cracked it tonight. But I don't get the cigar tonight. Bit of a shame, really. But we look really. Steve said it earlier. And it's really noticeable to me how organized we look. I think we're difficult to break down. We look fit. We look like we know what we're doing. It looks like a lot of camaraderie going on there, and it looks like probably an obvious thing, Matthew, which we've moaned about in the past. There seems to be the right pegs in the right holes,
Yeah, I think you only have to see the reaction after the Swansea result of how much that meant to players.
And City fans quite enjoyed that one, it seems.
I think they did. But you could see that what it meant to the players, and you could see already that, like you said, that players have formed relationships. Mete and Collins doing dances together, and Robinson and Tanner coming over together, and I mean, I don't think we can underrate how good a player Siopis is. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but
No, I think
you know,
he's even he wasn't great on the weekend, but I still think that's a quality player. That's someone who could play, and I think he'd play in the Prem myself.
he's everywhere and wins everything and chases everything and can make a pass. And to have him in there takes the pressure off Rousey so that he can go and do what he's good at, which is passing the ball and being in the attacking half. Not too sure about Ryan Wintle at number 10, if I'm honest, but it's
No,
a
I
new
really
role.
didn't think that worked at all, actually.
It's a new role for him, so I don't know. It takes some time for him to adapt to that, but we're playing good football. We're compact. We know what we want to do, and you've got to remember that 2 or 3 of our starting wingers aren't there. Ramsey's not there. So, we're missing 3 or 4 of our starting lineup, and we're still winning games. Rotherham was quite comfortable. Obviously, Sunderland wasn't, but Sunderland many chances, but we just looked so hard to break down and such a different team to play. I completely agree with Steve. If you think we've gone away to 3 of the top 5, I think.
Yep.
Should have beaten Leeds, realistically.
Leeds, Leicester, Ipswich.
Should have got a point against Leicester. We were unlucky there. And if he didn't change tactics against Ipswich, you probably would have got 3 points there. But so I think I think at the start of the season we were thinking, right, just not to get relegated, not be in a relegation battle, So it's still a long way to go, but I think the positive signs are there. And then obviously remember we can actually sign players in January for money. And you think the squad they've brought with
money.
Yeah, well, look at the squad they've made with loans and frees. Look what I think. You give them money, and we could be getting some absolute gems in from Turkey and Greece that no one knows about. That Bullet knows. I mean, Siopis and Gustas being 2 of them, and we can go from there.
So is he the golden or silver bullet?
Silver at the moment because he only signed for a year, and if he keeps doing this well, I'm sure some Premier League team might want to poach him, which is a bit of a worry.
Too. Yeah. So Steve, you mentioned earlier about the organisation. One thing which I've noticed, I remember the QPR match, which was really disappointing. We'd looked so good in those earlier games, and in that match, and up until that match, I think Gutas was playing on the left-hand side of central defence, and McGuinness was playing on the right. And to me, that made no sense. So I talked to some friends about it. I said probably it's because they're on their strongest tackling foot. But I don't think it was the right thing to do, because when we try and play from the back, it made us look ponderous and awkward. And since they swapped over, I think that they look great together, those 2.
I agree. Also, I think last season, if you think back to the start of last season, things looked quite good as we won our first 2 home games, I think. And one of the reasons for that was Jamilu Collins, I thought, because he was
what a player,
fantastic player until he got that terrible injury at West Brom away. But then now he's come back in. I don't know if you noticed, particularly the crossfield ball he played to Ollie Tanner before the first goal against Swansea. Siopis, rather than going over to congratulate Ollie Tanner, went over and congratulated Jamilu Collins straight away. I think a lot of it, I agree with you about Gutas and McGuinness. They are making a good combination, but I think the fullbacks are working very well as well with Jamilu Collins and Perry Ng's. Perry Ng's looking a lot more expensive as well. And he made some interesting comments after the game on Saturday about how last season was awful, and now they seem to have a direction. They seem to know where they're going. That's got to be hugely down to Errol Bullet.
Yeah, and talking about NG, I was just absolutely delighted that he got that goal. It was great to see somebody like him, because I think he's one of those players. He wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? He doesn't mess around, and I think he's a proper City fans kind of player. And of course, he's one of the ones, Steve, which thankfully he's signed an extended contract. And as if there's a lot of that going on, maybe Ollie Tanner would be next, I don't know. But NG is, he was interesting, Steve. He played quite often. He played quite way forward, didn't he, of the other 3? It's almost like the junction point to take it further forward,
Yes, I think the only concern that I've got is that, as we illustrated a little bit at Blackburn away last week in the League Cup, is that we don't have that much depth still. So
no, we don't
go down too far before people drop out. Now, I thought perhaps people might argue with me when they see this recording back, but I think Carlin Grant has come on tremendously. Carlin Grant seems to get better every game he plays. I think a few times on Saturday, a fella behind me was telling him shouting to get him off, but then it was him who put the cross in for Keon on
Well,
Saturday.
that's an interesting point, because I thought Carlin Grant in the first half had an unmitigated mare, right? I thought everything he did went wrong, including and then the second half, he had that shot, which like nearly Iron Nige, good to have you with us. Which went probably over the stand somewhere, I don't know. And then he put that, and then he cut in onto his right, put that beautiful cross in for Keon Atete, and after that he couldn't put a foot wrong.
Yeah.
So I think he's very much a confidence player, actually.
Absolutely.
He's also playing with an injury as well. You've got to remember that as well. He's slightly injured, isn't he? If you saw him at the end of the game, he had 2 ice packs around his legs, bless him.
Nigel, thanks for joining us.
Good evening, everyone.
Well
Hi.
done.
Hi, Steve.
Just fresh back from
Nigel, how you
Lisbon.
doing?
Oh, what a difference. It was 31 degrees this morning, and I'm back. Really traffic plugged up South Wales. I don't know.
welcome back to the Welsh way of life.
Exactly, yeah. 20 mile an hour Cymru.
I set up everything to go live on YouTube tonight. It's not actually, this one isn't actually at the moment streaming live. It must be, it's very close to being right. There must be some issue because you got to copy across a whole bunch of codes.
Yeah.
That means because we're not live, we can't get the chat in. But
Yeah.
moving forward, and I'm consciously saying it a few times in case anyone chips into part of this, we are moving to YouTube. We had to move to YouTube because we were Facebooked. When you've been Facebooked. And
exactly.
so we didn't have much of an option, and it will get bigger and stronger and more high profile as it goes forward. Did you manage to watch the game on the weekend from anywhere?
I managed to catch the second half on a little
The best bit.
mobile screen out there. And I've obviously seen the goals since. I saw both second half goals as well. So obviously I didn't really get to watch the match in full or really digest it in full, but just got to be pleased with how this season's going, isn't it? And how September has gone for them. Particularly after that 3-2 setback at Ipswich start of the month, and questions were coming out. And I think the Swansea game, I think a lot of people felt that there could have been a judgment made had we had a poor game against Swansea, but they've done the exact opposite. And kudos to all of them, the manager and the players.
So the Swansea game was kind of seeing you just back from being away and you've travelled back and you must be tired. I'll just cheer you up by talking about the Swansea game. So the we waited so long, haven't we, for that? Obviously, there's a certain person we're going to talk about in a minute, but do you see that as the night that we started to believe in ourselves a bit more?
Yeah, I think it clicked that day with the fans. I think if you think back to that Swansea game at the start of the month, obviously we played brilliant at Ipswich for an hour, 2-up. Should have seen that game out.
We looked great tonight.
And then they had those couple of games before it, Leicester and Leeds, where again they sort of dropped and threw away points fairly carelessly late on, I suppose. It was the QPR home game that was a loss. I know it was the first one. The Sheffield Wednesday win wasn't entirely convincing, even though it was a last minute winner. So I think people were starting to query, did they actually have the right quality? Did they have the right attitudes? But that Swansea game, it just clicked, and in fairness, it is a brand new team, lots of new players, and it was always going to need that 5 or 6 games to gel and before we could make a real judgment call. But had they not performed against Swansea and lost that day, it could have got, they could have had an adverse reaction, because I think there was people like that at that point.
So I'm glad you said that. We're only 9 games in, by the way, so it was early days. What's that, about a fifth of the season, more or less, I suppose. But a friend of mine said after that game, I think it might have been, was it the Ipswich one where we made all the substitutions and we went on to lose when we were looking great?
That was one of the things that Bullet seemed to be doing, didn't he? When they were in reasonable positions, he seemed to be making changes at the wrong time and the wrong choices. So getting caught out with a lot of late goals conceded. Yeah,
and of course Leeds, wouldn't have been lovely to beat Leeds. But my friend, I'm not naming him at the moment. We'll see how the season develops. But he said, a tinkerer, right? If he hadn't made those changes, he doesn't know what he's doing. We should let him look after youth team. He's not ready to manage in British football. let's get someone else in, and if we lose against Swansea, he's a goner. So I mean, at that time, and that's how pivotal that game was, I think.
It did genuine question marks at that point, and a lot of it did have to do with Bullett's tactics and subs. But you know, in fairness, I think him and his whole coaching team, they're all new to the UK. He seems to know opposition teams pretty well and the Championship pretty well, but he can't. You know, he's only ever studied it from afar. So, you know, like the new players that have come in, it was always going to take him time to sort of learn. And I do feel that, you know, part of the reason they've sorted things out is he's calmness personified, isn't he? He doesn't seem to get fazed by anything, speaks very well. Players all seem to like him, even when they weren't getting the right results at the beginning of the season. They seem to have trust and faith in him, and it's all come together. And I think, you know, the backbone is 3 clean sheets in the last 4 games, isn't it? So we're scoring goals, and we were scoring goals right from the kickoff this season, but we were also conceding a shed load as well. So now they've stopped them going in at one end. The results are starting to roll with it, which is you know, so it's getting it right at both ends. It's really clicked into place.
Yes, that's right. And Steve, we could at some point during this show talk about pronunciation of players' names, because there's plenty of room for maneuver there if you look at the new players. But one of them, I think it's pronounced Runarsson. Actually, is actually how you pronounce it. I think. Of course, he'll be Runarsson, because, you know, Mayate becomes mighty, doesn't he? You know, and all the rest of it. But
it was Gunnarsson. It was Aaron Gunnarsson, wasn't it, when he played for us? But everyone pronounced him Gunnarsson.
Gunner, yeah, the Gunner.
It's just Gunnarsson with an R. That's what I'm looking at it.
Yeah. But what I was going to say, Steve, I was really surprised, massively surprised, actually. And maybe this says a good thing about our manager. We've already had a few Bullet jokes, if you can think of any puns, Nudge, just to put that one out there. But you know, when he changed his goalkeeper, because there's another one I always thought was Alnwick, but it was Alnwick apparently. So when Alnwick was playing fairly well, he didn't put a foot wrong, had he? And then he put Runarsson in for the cup match, and then he kept him in and dropped him, and then he swapped it back, Steve. You know,
was it not the case that Runarsson was supposed to play against Swansea, but didn't he have some sort of tweak? So Anak came back in, and he's
is that what it is?
Not really look back, I don't think. But yeah, to come back to the players, I think it's fantastic to have Aaron Ramsey back. But I would say as well that Siopis has been an absolute revelation. Like when Errol Bullitt came in, and I got the message on my phone, Cardiff City's new manager, Errol Bullitt. I'm thinking, who's he? And we signed Siopis. And the first thing I read about him was that the fans of the Turkish club he was at, excuse me, I can't remember the name, were up in arms about letting him go. And I thought, well, that's got to be a good sign.
And apparently he bought himself out of his contract, didn't he? Apparently.
That's absolutely fantastic. Again, I'd just like to come back on what Nige said. Evening, Nige, by the way. Welcome back.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, mate?
Not so bad, not so bad. Yeah, I was going to say, I thought Ipswich, he did make those changes, but if you think about it, the second and third Ipswich goals had a huge amount of good fortune about them as well. Because the second one was a corner, which Siopis, not going to criticise him at all, tried to cut it out and just brilliantly managed to deflect it into the path of the Ipswich player. And then again, the third goal was a lot of pinball with the ball going in. We did have a couple of good chances ourselves to go to 4-2 to go ahead at the time. But again, if you look back and if you'd have said to me, we'll lose to Ipswich on the second and we'll win the next 4 games, we probably would have taken that.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely right, Steve. Yeah, I just think if you go back to that Ipswich game, when we went to it, they were gone, weren't they? Ipswich.
Absolutely.
We were in complete control of that game, and I think if I remember rightly, going back to that one, within the next 5 or 10 minutes, he'd made 3 subs, and with that, and it was attacking players off for defensive players on, more or less, and it just gave Ipswich that momentum to go forward. Now, and we did get sloppy at the back, and they did score fluky goals, undoubtedly, you know, and that contributed to that result. You know, if they played that game again 10 times, we'd win it 8 or 9 times. It was just how it ran on the day. But he almost allowed Ipswich to license to come forward and attack us, and it stopped what we were doing when we were completely dominating the game.
Yeah, another thing about that was that I was at that game, driving back, heard an interview with the Ipswich manager, who was saying, obviously they were very positive about it on the local radio there, but the Ipswich manager did say he'd played against a different sort of team today, which is a good analysis of the way Errol Bullitt's getting us to line up. And again, I mentioned a lot about Sunderland. it's amazing watching Sunderland constantly having to go sideways across our two banks of four.
Yeah.
They couldn't get through. When they did, Jack Hannock was equal to everything. Yeah, we got a couple of good blocks in, but we stopped them playing. That was such a classic away performance.
Oh, completely agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, everyone says, "Oh, it was a smash and grab job," and it was because we got the late winner. But that's a good team who can go to a place like Sunderland, who are free scoring, winning everything in sight. And you know, teams weren't even touching them, were they? Couldn't lay a glove on them in the 3 or 4 weeks before that game. And then again, they had a big win last weekend, didn't they? So, you know, Cardiff are the only team who's managed to do that to them in the last few months and made them look pretty ordinary on the day for all the possession they had. Yeah, they were doing nothing with it, were they?
Yeah, absolutely, and it was good to very, very confident about Jack Hannock, very confident about everybody at the moment. I am a little bit concerned. The only concern I've got is that we've got we've never had it particularly. We've not got the strength in depth, as was illustrated last week. Hope I did see Siopis had an ice pack on his leg. I really hope he's okay for tomorrow night. He's such a key player for us, and long may he stay fit.
He hasn't looked totally at his best actually the last couple of games, but there's still even against Rotherham, you know, even then, I just love the way he just makes himself available. He seldom really gives the ball away cheaply. And was he 4 for 10 or something? You know, I mean, he goes up for a header. You know, he gets stuck in. He gets booked for fouling someone. Matthew, he's got the potential, hasn't he, to become a bit of a cult hero, I think, at Cardiff City.
Oh yeah, he's got the potential to be the next Gunnarsson. I know we started off talking about him, but I'm not surprised he's not been his best because he's put the energy in. You watched him against Swansea, and it was what I think, you know, we've lacked the last 3 or 4 derbies. There's no passion in it, you know, and he was winning everything, and then, you know, 3 days later he's playing against Coventry and winning everything there as well. So
yeah.
You know, he plays 100 miles an hour all the time. There's no layoff. So I think, you know, we have been playing, or would have been playing Sunday, Tuesday now for 2 or 3 weeks. So I think come international break, although obviously he is a Greek international, so we might be playing games for them. But hopefully we can get a rest. I think, but it's not just us. You look at quite a few squads across the Championship, and there are players falling on left, right, and centre. So I agree with Steve. It's a bit of depth management now, and hopefully we don't get any serious injuries at left back or right back, because we'll be in a bit of trouble there if we do.
Of course, on the weekend, you know, when he went down, you know, heart in mouth sort of thing, you know, and talking to Collins, you know, when he went down, I think, you know, I hope it's not that injury, but he didn't look great, and then he was heavily strapped up, wasn't he, when he came back in? So it's a possibility that he might be rested. Of course, O'Dowda's been out for a while, who's the backup to him, basically, in some ways. Bowler's been out for a while. He's apparently Steve Morrisonism, I think, back on the grass. And then we got, of course, Ramsey, you know, who's just pure class. But if we were missing, and of course, Mate also went down off the ball, didn't he? So there's five players there. So I don't know what the situation is for Middlesbrough, but if we're missing Collins, then we're probably looking at some sort of tactical change. And if he and Mate are both out, then obviously there's 2 players have to come into the squad. And then you're looking to some quite young players, really, you know. So
yeah, I know we've got Panzo and Romeo that can come in and help across the back 4, but Siopis would be a big loss, I think, in midfield, because we'd have to bring on one of Adams, Bruno Mata, or Sawyers, and none of those 3 are in brilliant form. I know Adams has looked okay when he has played, but in the game against Blackburn, Sawyers and Bruno Mata were not really there. They were missing. So I'd be a bit concerned. And obviously Middlesbrough have won their last 2 games as well now, so they're on a bit of a bounce back. So it's going to be an interesting what we do tomorrow, but we shown against Birmingham City in the Cup that we can play a different formation and then make it work. So if we need to.
Panzo could come in, I suppose. What do you think, Nigel? Do you think he might go to maybe three in the middle?
Yeah, they could do. I mean, it's I think tomorrow, if I remember rightly, it's the 6th game they've played in 17 days, Cardiff. So
a lot of games.
It's a lot. Even if you're fit, that's going to take a lot out of you physically as well. So, but then again, after we play Watford on Saturday, we've got the international break. So you would like to think, you know, he can nurse players from at least a game this week, knowing that they've got a 2-week break, that he can get everyone coming back Really, the interesting one for me was Bowler, because I did hear at the time he had quite a bad injury and he was going to be out for quite some time, and they didn't seem to publicise that, and obviously that's the way it has turned out. So I would have thought was going to be a big miss for us, but for the form of Ollie Tanner, who has really come through. But the two players you've got to remember, they've been used quite sparingly so far, are Ruben Colwill, and every time he's played this season, I think he's really stepped up. And yet, he hasn't had chances yet. So, there's maybe a possibility for him tomorrow. And Callum Robinson, who obviously has had a knocking coming back from injury. But he wasn't involved on Saturday, I don't believe. He didn't come on, did he, Steve?
I think he came on towards the end, didn't he?
He got a few minutes.
He did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you would think he would probably get some game time this week. Bearing in mind they've got 2 weeks off after the 2 games this week. So I think he may well be in the mix at some point, whether it's tomorrow or Saturday, I don't know.
Is he still in the Ireland squad?
I think he is, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
I don't know how much you guys believe in the old Cardiff City forum. I don't know what our opinions of that are here. But they had a comment that apparently Robinson and Blewett had a bit of an argument going down the tunnel on Saturday. I was reading about that. Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of juicy gossip we need,
But I don't know if there's any truth in
Punches thrown?
I don't know. Apparently they had words, but I don't know if it was over something trivial or what. Obviously, no one knows. So,
wow.
I don't think that's a bad sign though, because Robinson hasn't had game time this season, and he, when he's been on the pitch, he's celebrated, and even on the touchlines, everything else. So, if he's feeling good to play and get some game time, and he's not getting enough of it, I think it's a good thing if he's shouting up and making himself known. And that was one of the things I was going to mention, where I think Cardiff have grown this season. If you go back to the end of last season on this show, how many times were we talking about there's no leaders in this team? We got no leaders in the club at all. Now, look at this season. I think we got leaders right the way through the spine, effectively.
That's a really good point.
You've got McGuinness, who has really, really stepped up this season. And obviously Joe Rawls is having a great season so far, as well as Siopis. And even with the forwards, you're seeing a lot more vocal activity out of them, it's all good to see that, that they are all challenging each other. And when you see the social media side of the club, which has been brilliant this season, I have to say as well, what the work they're doing on the social side, you can see that, squad wise, it looks brilliant down there. Wins help, obviously, but it really does seem as if they're on a different level to last season in all facets.
I mean, it's the irony, isn't it, that McGuinness almost went to Sheffield Wednesday in the summer. I bet.
Unbelievable.
But luckily, he's one of the ones who signed an extended contract now.
Yes.
He just looks so. Those two together, I think they look really, really strong. Everyone says the same thing. If he is a future Cardiff City captain, I think he is. And he seems to enjoy it. He's a class act, isn't he? Of course, there was a certain. I'll bring Steve onto this. There was a certain character playing against us on the weekend. I'll give you a few clues. He's got. He looks like he's wearing an American football outfit. He's a fairly wide character. He seems to indulge in raising his arms when he goes for the ball, with his head falling over a lot, and scrapping with other players and winding up the opposition fans. Steve Thomas, I give you Mr. Jordan Hugel.
Absolutely. I have to say, though, that I've always been quite enamoured with him after he managed to score after 5 minutes against Nottingham Forest, which, living where I do, is always a good thing to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was
not enough, is it?
Absolutely. He was largely anonymous on Saturday, and again, quite often we have nullified players like that. And I was very encouraged the way Rotherham seemed to just want to belt the ball forward every time, because they're absolutely meat and drink to Gutas and if I pronounce that correctly, and McGuinness. I'm just so encouraged by everything. I'm very encouraged by what you said there, Nigel, about the fact, we have got Ruben Colwill coming, who has been used sparingly so far. So perhaps there is a chance for him to step up. And of course, Callum Robinson may, if there is any truth in what was on the message board about him and Errol on Saturday, could get some game time if we're going to leave Ollie Tanner as the impact player that come on the last 10-15 minutes. Because against Swansea, can I just go back against Swansea as well? One thing I was particularly impressed by talking about.
Please go back to Swansea.
Yeah, just come back there, just briefly. Is I happened to glance down the pitch and see Jack Annock's reaction at the end of the game, when he ran towards the corner where the visiting supporters were and leapt in the air to obviously celebrate in front of them. I was particularly impressed by that. So he certainly endeared himself to me very well by doing that.
Because Steve, you know, bearing in mind you travel down from Nottingham, as you alluded to Nottingham then for the games.
Yeah.
How special was that Swansea game for you? I don't mind talking about the Swansea match. How special was it for you? Because we waited a long time for that, haven't we?
Absolutely, we have. After the last two seasons, I think last season was worse in a way, losing 3-2 to the added time goal, rather than losing 4-0 when everybody had walked out the ground. So it was easier for me getting away because everybody had gone. But yeah, it was very, very. I seem to use less petrol going home after wins that we've been having recently as well. So I seem sort of more float home afterwards. But yeah, it's been really good to us in, as I say, four home wins this season so far out of 5. And when we only got 6 home wins in the whole of last season, so everything's looking well. It's a definite positivity alert here. I hope we're not going to get a pin in the balloon before too long, but because this is Cardiff City, don't forget it is a roller coaster for all of us. We've all been here long enough. I hope this keeps going very much. I hope very much as well that if we are in this good position in January, Errol will be backed. If there was a chance we could have a proper promotion challenge, if we're still in a similar position to where we are now, I'd like to see him back in January. And also going back to the contract as well, all very well to tie the players down. As you said, Matthew, if we've only got Errol on the 1 year, let's tie him down sooner rather than later.
Good call, but Nigel, you're just, I don't know whether you changed this. You're a little bit quiet at the moment, Nigel, which is not like you, just to say. But I was speaking to somebody on the weekend, and they said, you know, I said, when did we last win 4 games? He said, well, we won 6 in a row under Mad Mick.
Yeah.
And he said, if you remember at that time, that's when everyone started giving him a long-term contract, you know. So do we still need to be a little bit cute with that?
Yeah, it was when McCarthy got his agent to drop a story in the press that Celtic were interested in him.
Yeah.
And Delman panicked, didn't he, at the time, and put him on a long-termer. And then he didn't want to know after that. It was almost like he was setting him up to get sacked, you know, because that's
he never did anything since anyway.
The moment they gave him that contract, it was great. But yeah, you're right. That was the last time. And I can remember McCarthy. I think didn't he go on for 5 or 6 wins, if I remember rightly? I
think it was 6.
Yeah, and I can remember them interviewing him, and they said, "What have you done?" He said, "I honestly got no idea."
He probably didn't.
Yeah, he did seem that type of character, didn't he? That he really didn't know what was happening, why, and how he was setting them up. You know, he just got. But yeah, they did have some sort of bounce. Whether it was just happy to see the back of the previous manager or not, I don't know. But yeah, I was trying to think, when was the last time they were in the playoffs, and I completely forgot the playoffs, the COVID season, when of course we nearly got to the final. And it's amazing because you weren't there seeing the games. You almost blank that season out of your mind, even though we had, you know, Harry Wilson, Kiefer Moore, and go. Because we're only watching it on TV screens, you forget what went on there.
What do you make of Steve's point though about you know, if we're there or thereabouts come January, is that the time, because obviously the transfer window opens, it's our first transfer window for a couple of years. We can potentially spend some money. Is that the time to say, okay, Errol, you know, you're the man. Let's give you some cash.
Well, they've given the signals that's what will happen, haven't they? Because they've now cleared the Salah financial issue, and they've sort of had there will
be some money coming in,
and I did hear the figure that they were getting off that insurance claim, which was quite significant, in the millions. So you know there are funds in that potentially they wouldn't have had in budget at the start of the season. You've also got this situation with Kiefer Moore, where Bournemouth still owe Cardiff well over £1 million, which is why I think they're probably in pole position to sort out a deal to bring Kiefer probably permanently in January, if that is still to happen. And surely Kiefer will, I know he's living life down on the south coast and been in Bournemouth, but if he's not getting any game time there at all, surely he's not going to be happy with that and will want to play. And the indications were that he did want to come to Cardiff, but obviously because of the challenges with the embargo, they couldn't bring him in on loan at the time. So yeah, January looks certainly an option there. So yeah, I'm sure they will. They seem to be doing pretty well at the back and in midfield. Probably, even though there's a lot of forward attacking players, they do miss that goal scorer, don't they? Really, Pepe's coming on, but Ugbo,
I'm not sure about Ugbo at the moment. Yeah. Matthew, so I'll ask you the same question. So, you know, we're 5th, 6th, you know, in the playoffs, in and around the playoffs. January transfer window opens. Well, how does that affect Mr. Bullitt?
I think they've got to back him. They've got to. I think we've been quite frugal the last few years, obviously for embargoes and everything else, and we haven't really spent big on the squad for a while. I can't remember what the last big fee we paid for a player was. Probably
Good
was
question.
Kiefer, I would have thought, maybe.
Probably.
Possibly was.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
you know, we've been frugal and we've been in the relegation battles, and you know, Tan obviously wants to be seen to still be investing in the club. So I think they've got to back him, and you know, I trust him with the funds. I think Tan can trust him with the funds. Looking at what we did with frees and loans, we've built a pretty good squad, a pretty decent championship squad so far. But I agree that I know Ugbo scored a few goals at the start of the year. Was unlucky not to score against Rotherham on the weekend, but
Yeah,
I think, you know, and Tete looks good, but I wouldn't think he'd be our main striker. But if he can keep scoring goals the way he has been, then why not? But if we can get Keita in January, that's, you know, a guaranteed 10, 15 goals on top of, and we've got the players to get the ball into him. You know, we've got the Ollie Tanners and the Metes and the Grants and the bowlers who are really good at crossing the ball in. And you know, I think that'll change our season. We got 2 or 3 good players in January. As long as Ramsey can stay fit, then I don't see any reason why we can't be a top 12 side.
so as it's the Cardiff City Fund, and you know, we have a history of talking about this kind of stuff. Does he get the new contract in January?
If we're in the top half of the table, I think he will.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I see it as. Because I think the club, like you mentioned, I think the club will be cautious after what happened with Mick, I reckon.
Yes. Yeah. You don't want to be bitten again. I just thought another one by the way, Nigel, we can come up with a song for this. 18 with a bullet.
Pete Wingfield. I remember that one.
It's got to be a tune in there for him. Steve, changing the subject. Of course, Franny Lee. You know, Franny Lee's passed away. Football legend. You know, okay, it's a different club, but you know, a legendary footballer. Any memories, Steve, of seeing him play at all, or any thoughts on him passing away?
I do remember was that amazing punch up he had with Norman Hunter.
Oh yeah.
They both got
That's
sent
the first thing you think of, isn't it?
It wasn't the handbag stuff. That was
proper fighting. Good, yeah. Good quality.
But no, he is a quality player. It's obviously very, very sad when you see people who were basically household names as footballers when certainly I was growing up, and Nigel's kind of my generation as well. It's such a shame when you see players, and you know, Trevor Francis earlier on in the year as well. Just very sad that such quality players from our youth are passing on now.
So Nigel, you probably remember. Pretty sure Franny Lee, did he play for England in the home internationals against us? I think
he did. I don't think he ever played against City that I can remember, but he certainly played at Linian Park for England in the home internationals a couple of times, and he was combative, wasn't he? But I can't remember that goal. It's the one where you got that John Watson commentary. Look at his face. Look at his face. Remember that one when he scored his outstanding goal, and he was because he was very expressive, wasn't he? He was. You know, very expressive, combative player, and such a talent, really. So so sad to see players like that go. Trevor Francis, of course, I did see play against Cardiff a number of times, including as a 16-year-old when he first started out. Went up to Birmingham, there was 50-odd thousand there, and he scored against some Bob Hatton, who later played. No, he didn't. I thought it was Bob Hatton. It turned out to be another scorer. But that was a day I remember really well, and we thought City were on their way with school, and it didn't happen that season. And that was a pivotal game.
I think when a player like Franny Lee passes away, because it's Cardiff City phone in, you know, but you know, it's only the Cardiff City phone in because we love football. So you know, we do need to not nod towards, you know, those kind of significant moments. And this is totally unrelated to football altogether, but I think having characters in sport is a lovely thing, and I think we're losing it a bit. So I watched the Ryder Cup on the weekend, and you know, Shane Lowry, you know, he's big, he's tubby, he's got a big beard. You can't barely understand a word he says, and he just absolutely, totally wears his heart on his shoulder, and he's so different to all the soulless automatons that you see in sport. So, you know, it's great to have characters in sport, I think, Nigel.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's, when we think of all the idols from our youth, they were talented players, and they were,
Absolutely.
mavericks.
Robin
But
Friday.
you could remember them for half the time for what they did off the pitch as much as what they did on it. Certainly
Yeah.
like your George Best and players like that, but
Yeah.
Kevin Keegan and all those sort of players, they're so talented and characters. But you do feel there's a few in the City squad. I mean, Ollie Tanner's starting to win that sort of
Yeah.
status now, with the socks rolled down, and
Yeah.
the way he goes at players, that's quite old school, the way he approaches it. It is, and I think that's exciting fans of all generations when you see a player doing that, because he's a throwback.
So that's a great point you made there, Nigel. I'll ask you first, and then I'll go to Steve. Only in order of age, Matthew. No offense, but thinking about players like that over the years. So I think back to Dave Bennett. The first name comes into my head, and at Ninian, and as soon as he got the ball, a buzz would go around the ground. I think, and there's a bit of that. There's a bit about that with Ollie Tanner. He's just up for it, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, if I throw another name at you, Ollie Tanner's in his school is the Willie Anderson when he played for City, because he was that sort of, yeah, and he had his socks sort of halfway down his legs, didn't he? Between he would pull down.
Ian Gibson.
Ian Gibson, great player. But yeah, you're right. That's the sort of play that really excites fans. And if you look at social media, the last few days, and I haven't been around, I've been away, but been looking on the.
You've been in
Twitter
Lisbon, you've been in Portugal.
There's a lot of
got
people
a
now saying, we've got to get a chance for Ollie Tanner. He's someone who's excited all fans because of just his approach, and it's refreshing to see someone like that.
And we like his song, don't we, Matthew? We like his new song, about scoring a goal against Swansea. Nice sing along for all the family there.
No, I wouldn't say all the family, but
anyone you can think of, Matthew, who's excited you? Or obviously you're a bit younger than us.
Very first player Cardiff was Earnshaw for me, Robert Earnshaw.
Yeah.
But then another one that comes to mind that I remember the club was absolutely buzzing about at the time was Jason Kumas.
Oh, Jason Kumas, what a great
He was a level.
Tell me your memories of that.
He was a level above in the Championship. I was only quite young, but so my footballing brain wasn't there. But every time he got the ball, you could see he was already 2-3 steps ahead of the players in front of him. And all right, the Ninian Park pitch wasn't always the best for him. But yeah, I just remember being absolutely thrilled getting him on loan, and obviously we weren't able to buy him, but what a player! What a player!
Yeah, it's a good call. That is. I remember it's the same kind of thing every time he got the ball. They were just, here we go. There'd be a buzz. How about you, Steve?
Well, I think Nigel and Matthew kind of stolen my thunder, because I'm going to sound like a broken record here, because I'd also agree about Willie Anderson. I remember seeing him in the 70s at Ninian Park. I also remember Jason Kumas' first game when he came back. We were 1-0 down to Leeds at home. He came on as a sub, and I think he'd scored within 5 minutes of first coming up. And also Ernie. Every time, I've got friends who support other teams, obviously, as we all have, and that they were saying whenever Ernie played against them, they were scared every time he got the ball he was going to score. I was at Boston United when he scored his hat trick, and I got a friend who supports Boston United who said it was along the side, and one of his goals was a volley, and he said the linesman turned to him and just blew his cheeks out with four. So players like that really, really, really get you. Not that we sit down. Well, I certainly don't sit down. They give you that air of expectation. I think Kumas and Willie Anderson. I'm sorry not to have a brain of my own on this, but that's fantastic by you, lad.
The other lad just springs to mind who, what I'm talking about is someone that get the ball and just kind of lifts the crowd, gives you that sense of excitement. What was the name, Nigel? You'll probably remember quickly. The lad we had on loan from Leeds, the fullback.
Cody Drama.
Yeah, he was great as well.
Yeah. What if he's gone to Birmingham now, hasn't he?
Yeah. And he's joined Dion Sanderson.
Yeah. Strange, because he's supposed to have done really well pre-season at Leeds, and then they shipped him off again.
Yeah.
Birmingham have bought him, haven't they? He's a permanent signing, I think. He's not alone now.
Yeah, because he's at Luton last year.
That's right. And then this summer they've now sold him to Birmingham, I'm sure. But yeah, great player. Kavanagh was great in his time as well. But even though he was a midfielder, he was that sort of player that just got people off their seats as well.
And we had proper characters as well, didn't we? I mean, if you look at that squad. We go back to that famous Leeds United game. There were some big personalities on that pitch, weren't there?
Yeah, or Leggy. Legend Jason Bowen. Yeah, they were huge personalities.
Um,
The ironic thing is Peter Whittingham, who's probably the classiest player
there's
we've
another
seen
one.
in our lives.
Yeah.
He was just a Mr. Normal, unfortunately come to his demise in that pub. But I'm in Barry, and I used to go in that pub, and Pete would be in there, just in the corner at the bar, because he'd been there with his sort of family or a couple of mates of his, and you would not know he was a Cardiff City legend. He would be just having a quiet drink or chat with mates. But that was Whittingham, and I know they were playing at the Air Dinners where the players would go out partying in town, and he would just go for a drink with a couple of the fans and somewhere in the city centre. He was he didn't have that charisma. He didn't need it. He just did it football wise. So it is quite ironic that the best player we probably have seen didn't have that sort of personality to match it that you usually see in these maverick type players.
But he did have. If you remember that one season where he scored like a crazy amount of goals, mostly from kind of midfield. Yeah. He did have that sense of excitement when Peter Whittingham, when it free kicks, dead ball, whatever, you just knew something was going to happen, didn't you?
You did, and he did get the crowd off their seats, didn't you? There was limbs everywhere when Peter Whittingham scored his goals, and even there'd been barely any reaction on him, wasn't there? Barely a smile on his face. He would get mobbed and he'd go back for the kickoff. He was incredible personality.
One of the best goals he scored was the goal at Leicester in the playoff semi-final.
Yeah.
I can hear the ping from the post in my head every time someone mentions that goal.
One of those memorable goal celebrations. However, not there was actually a goal of his, but in the League Cup final against Liverpool, in the 118th minute, having played the whole game, he put the two corners at the end right under the bar. We nearly scored from the first one, and
That's
then
right.
put it across the line for the second one. But both the corners were absolutely perfect, right underneath the bar after 118 minutes. That is just such quality.
Was it Middlesbrough got that amazing run? Was that
yeah.
What a goal that was.
Had his back to goal, turned
Ridiculous
3 defenders and pinged it top right corner.
I remember being in the away end that day. It was almost like an out-of-body experience because Steve would have been there as well. That away end, I don't think I've known an away end more bouncing than that day. It was like, because we've been waiting for 30, 40 odd years all our lives for a moment like that, knowing we were going to a Wembley thing. And, it was just absolutely incredible when Witt scored. And then Roger Johnson made it 2-0.
Absolutely.
And then we thought, they're definitely going to come back from this. But they didn't really get a sniff that day. It was unbelievable.
That was my second ever away game as a City fan, that was.
Wow.
My first was a 5-1 defeat to Reading when Reading got 100 points in that season. And then went up to Middlesbrough and, literally feeling the concrete moving beneath your feet. It was incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best City goals I can think of, actually, in terms of pure skill.
I would say my favourite would have been from that cup run as well. The goal that Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank scored against Wolves.
Yeah. That was a good goal.
I was in the Canton stand for that, and the way he, I think it was, I can't remember was it Andy Gray that he became a Sky pundit? I think he took 3 steps in the wrong direction when Hasselbank dummied him, and then he put that shot past Wayne Hennessy, ironically, right into the top corner.
However, the thing with that goal is, it's quite a nice little chat, this actually. However, that goal only reminded me massively of the same goal that Nathan Blake had already scored previously. It's almost exactly the same move. I'd say Nathan's was slightly better.
Yeah.
We should move on and talk a little bit about tomorrow, since there is a match. Yeah. So 4 straight wins into the top 6. Borough away, potentially O'Dowda, Bowler, Ramsey, definitely. Maybe Collins, maybe Matey, maybe five players missing, 5 good players too.
Yeah.
Panzo, I suppose, could come in, could play 3 at the back, could 3 in the middle of defence. I mean, although Panzo wasn't great in that cup game, and I suppose he could. You'd have to bring a couple of players into the squad. What do you think, Matthew? Because I think the point was made maybe before Nigel came in. I'm not sure, but because there's an international break coming up. Well, maybe Nigel was aware of this actually. That we can in a way take kind of a risk, but a couple of these players seem to be having hamstring concerns. You certainly don't want to take a risk with that.
No, and they're playing under the new rules. They're playing, 95 to 100-minute games, three, four times back to back to back. So, you want to be careful and you want to manage them. And I think we'll see squad management now over the next 2 games in the hope of getting through to after Watford with no serious injuries. I know obviously Ramsey's is still, we don't know if he needs an operation or not, but all the other ones don't seem too serious. So I think you are going to see the likes of Adams and Colwell and Robinson and Rinomata and Sawyers and Panzo getting game time over the next 2 games. Bullet said he'd give everyone a chance to have time and to prove themselves to him, and hopefully the players will step up because they want to be part of the good times that the squad are having at the moment. Because it's going to be a tough 2 games. Middlesbrough have won the last 2. Admittedly, Watford have lost their last 2, but it's never an easy place to go up to the Riverside, and they got a good manager in Carrick, and they played well last year. So
I think they're in a false position, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they lost their main players pretty much, so that's showing now. So I think we can go up there and get a result. I'm confident. We've won 4 in a row, so why can't we make it 5?
Yeah, even that cup game Nige against Birmingham. Okay, it didn't work against Blackburn, but we changed formation. We played players who weren't even central defenders. I'm not suggesting we do that, but we changed our shape altogether, and we look good, and we won first time around. Of course, the query is over the left back. I've said before, Joe Rawls could, in theory, could quite easily, I think, actually play that position. Panzo, I think, has played there. Do you think he mess around with that?
Panzo has, and I think it was his debut. He came on as a sub at left back, and then cost us. That was Ipswich, I think. He cost us one of the goals there.
Yeah.
Coming on that left back. So yeah, he is an option. Hopefully Jamilu is okay. It's just a sort of dead leg or something. You'd like to think so, but who knows? But tactically, I can't imagine he's going to be too far away from the setup he had at Sunderland. He probably is going to just try and condense them to keep it tight, and then let's see if he's got positive changes on the bench to try and win the game, which that's how it turned out up at Sunderland. I think he will. I don't think he's going to be we're going to see an expansive display from City tomorrow, and he's probably, you don't target games, they want to keep this run going, and I think he'd be highly delighted with a point up there, and he's probably hoping we can have a good go at Watford down here on Saturday. Then I think he'll want to go for both, but I think that's how he'll approach it in the back of his mind, I would have thought.
The other question is as well, if a couple of more players are out, who comes in? I mean, Rinomata wasn't in the squad for some reason on the weekend. He seems to be kind of rotating, funny enough, on the bench between him and Sawyers. So he'll come back in, but there's got to be maybe one of the kids. I don't quite know who else comes back in.
I'm not sure they really got many of the kids in back up there at all.
Bare bones now.
Because they sent those players out on them, like an Eli King or someone like that. So he's doing all right at Morecambe this season. I suppose Rinomata would be the one I would think, because he covers a lot of ground, and you probably need that in an away test at Middlesbrough. Sawyers, I would hope he doesn't get too much more game time at Cardiff, because I think that is one of the reasons we look so much better this season. Don't get me wrong, Sawyers is a talented player, but it's slow through him, isn't it? And I think that was part of the reason we struggled whenever Sawyers played. We just didn't have that cohesive approach, and I think Rinomata you've got to look at. But maybe it's time for Abu Adams to step up.
Maybe.
He's done well in a couple of games. He's probably been a bit quiet recently, but he should be back to full fitness now. So you would hope he can come good. Maybe it's his time to shine.
What about you, Steve? Briefly, any thoughts?
I think a lot of it depends on which players we're looking at. We've said at the start tonight about the spine of the team, Siopis, the role that he does and what it frees up Joe Rawls to do. If those two are both in there, I wouldn't be too concerned. I agree with what has been said about Ryan Wintle possibly not being a number 10, but he's a sound player. He could do a job as well. And Abu Adams, of course, came on towards the end on Saturday to replace Siopis. So perhaps that's Errol's thinking that he might bring him in there. So I think it depends very much. As long as we've got the spine, I'm not too uncomfortable about tomorrow night. I'm like Matthew said, I'm quite confident we can get something tomorrow night.
So to ask you an unfair one, can we have predictions for tomorrow and Watford?
Me first, or
Yeah.
Okay. Heads saying tomorrow night. Heads saying 1-1. Hearts saying 2-1. To us. Saturday 2-1 to us.
Okay, Matthew.
I was going to say 1-1 against Middlesbrough, and I think we'll beat Watford 2-0.
I think I go
Pleasure.
with I think I go the same as Matthew. We did have good win at Middlesbrough last season. You know, that was a shock one, wasn't it, when we were 3 up in the first half and then held on. You know, I take that again tomorrow night. But yeah, I think if we can get a point up there tomorrow night, I'd be delighted. Oh,
And sideways and disappeared, and I think that's probably a good place as anywhere to end this. So apologies for any technical issues tonight. We are changing exactly the platform and what we do, but it will grow, and we'll be back with more shows soon. Thank you very much to our panel tonight. 2/3 of the guests are still here, so that's okay. Thanks very much, and we'll be back with the show soon. Cheers all. Thank you.